The night the cold answered with bullets. Like, subscribe, and comment if you're ready to step into the darkest corners of real American crime. Because once this story begins, there's no turning back. Welcome. Not to a place of comfort. Not to a story with easy villains or simple heroes. Tonight, you're walking into a frozen street where fear moved faster than reason, where silence cracked like ice beneath a boot, and where one decision changed a city forever. The snow had already started falling again when they found him. Not in a dark alley. Not in some hidden place meant to bury secrets. But right there, on a Minneapolis sidewalk, under the pale glow of a flickering streetlight, where anyone could see, and yet, no one truly understood what they were witnessing. Alex Pretti lay on his back, his breath fogging weakly into the night air, red blooming across white snow like a stain that could never be washed clean. By the time sirens broke the stillness, the cold had already claimed him, and the city would never feel warm again. It happened just after dusk, when Minneapolis turns into something else entirely. The buildings feel taller. The streets feel narrower. And every shadow seems to carry weight. Federal agents had been moving through the neighborhood quietly at first, dark jackets, clipped radios, eyes scanning windows and doorways. An immigration operation, they said later. Routine. Controlled. Necessary. But nothing about that night would remain routine. Alex Pretti wasn't a suspect. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running. Witnesses would later say he was doing something dangerously human. He was trying to help. He had come out after hearing raised voices, sharp commands slicing through the cold air like broken glass. Someone was crying. Someone was pleading in a language not everyone around could understand. And Alex, a local, a familiar face to many, stepped forward. Not with a weapon. Not with threats. But with words. Words meant to slow things down. Words meant to calm. Words meant to remind everyone that there were children watching from behind curtains, neighbors holding their breath behind half-open doors. But fear doesn't listen well. One moment, Alex stood between agents and a terrified family, his hands visible, his voice strained but steady. The next moment, sound shattered the night. A single gunshot. Then another. The echoes bounced between brick walls and frozen windows, as if the city itself was unsure how to process what had just happened. Alex fell. Some say he reached out, like he was still trying to protect someone even as he collapsed. Some say he whispered something before the cold swallowed his voice. Others swear he never got the chance. And just like that, the operation ended in a pool of blood and unanswered questions. Within minutes, the street was sealed. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind like a warning flag no one could ignore. Flashing lights painted the snow red and blue, as if the ground itself had been drafted into the conflict. Agents stood rigid. Neighbors stood silent. Phones were raised, trembling hands recording the only evidence they believed they could trust. Because when power meets panic, truth becomes fragile. News broke before midnight. A man shot by federal agents during an immigration enforcement action. A name, Alex Pretti. A phrase repeated endlessly, officer-involved shooting. But for the people who saw it, heard it, felt it ripple through their bones, it wasn't just another phrase. It was a fracture. By morning, flowers appeared where Alex fell. Candles flickered against the cold, refusing to go out even when the wind tried to claim them. Handwritten signs leaned against the lamppost. Justice for Alex. He tried to help. Who protects us from those meant to protect? Civil rights advocates arrived first. Then lawyers. Then politicians, careful with their words, heavy with rehearsed concern. But the neighborhood didn't want speeches. They wanted answers. Who gave the order to fire? Why was lethal force necessary against an unarmed man? Why did helping others become a death sentence? The official statement was brief and sterile. Agents perceived a threat. Agents feared for their safety. Agents acted within protocol. But that word, protocol, felt painfully small against the weight of a life lost. As days passed, stories about Alex began to surface. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. He volunteered at a local shelter. He checked on elderly neighbors during winter storms. He broke up arguments not with fists, but with patience. And now his name was being spoken alongside words like justified, and investigation, as if his humanity could be filed away with paperwork. Protests erupted before the week was over. Not violent, not chaotic, just people standing in the cold, holding signs, holding candles, holding on to the belief that their voices still mattered. But behind the scenes, something darker was unfolding. A quiet war between narratives. Federal agencies began controlling information tightly. Body camera footage was withheld, pending review. Radio communications were classified. Agents involved were reassigned, then placed on leave. And slowly, a pattern emerged, not just about Alex's case, but about dozens like it across the country. Cases where force was used first and explained later. Cases where witnesses contradicted reports. Cases where families were left chasing a truth that seemed always one step ahead of them. Alex Pretti became more than a man. He became a symbol. For some, he was proof that law enforcement had gone too far. For others, a tragic but necessary casualty in dangerous work. But no matter which side people stood on, everyone agreed on one thing. This story was bigger than one street in Minneapolis. Legal experts weighed in, dissecting every frame, every second. Civil liberties groups demanded federal oversight. Community leaders called for reforms, transparency, accountability. Yet the deeper investigators dug, the stranger the case became. A leaked report suggested discrepancies in the agent's timeline. A witness came forward claiming Alex was already backing away when shots were fired. Another claimed one agent had shouted something that never appeared in the official transcript. And then came the detail that sent chills through everyone who read it. A single surveillance camera, positioned across the street from where Alex fell, had captured part of the incident, but the recording was corrupted. Not missing. Not deleted. Corrupted. As if someone had tried to erase something, and failed just enough to leave suspicion behind. That camera, that silent eye frozen in time, became the most valuable and dangerous piece of the entire case. Because if it could be restored, it could change everything. Or destroy it. As pressure mounted, a quiet meeting took place inside a federal building far from the frozen streets where Alex died. Doors closed. Voices lowered. Decisions made that would never appear in public records. Meanwhile, Alex's family waited. They waited for justice. They waited for clarity. They waited for a system that promised both and delivered neither. The city moved on, as cities always do. Snow melted. Streets cleared. New stories filled the headlines. But beneath the surface, the case refused to die. Because the question wasn't just whether Alex Pretti should have been shot. The question was whether anyone, anywhere, could step forward in a moment of fear and expect to survive it. And then, just when the investigation seemed to be stalling, when hope began to thin like winter air, a technician working late on corrupted video files noticed something. A shadow moving where no shadow should be. A shape in the distortion that didn't match the official reports. A moment that suggested someone else might have been closer to Alex than anyone admitted. They isolated the frame, enhanced it, slowed it down, and what they saw made them freeze. Because if that image was real, then everything the public had been told was wrong. And the truth, once revealed, would not only change Alex Pretti's story. It would shake the foundation of how power, fear, and justice collide in America. But the question now was not just what the footage showed. It was who would try to stop it from ever being seen. And that is where the real danger begins. The vanishing evidence. The first thing that disappeared wasn't a person. It wasn't a file. It wasn't even the video. It was silence. The silence that follows when too many people start asking the same dangerous questions. Inside a small, windowless room beneath a municipal building in Minneapolis, the corrupted surveillance footage sat on a secured workstation, humming softly like it was alive, like it knew what it carried. The technician who first noticed the shadow in the distortion hadn't slept in 2 days. Frame by frame, he replayed it, his fingers stiff from cold and fear. The image wasn't clear enough to be called proof, but it was too clear to ignore. A figure. Too close. Too still. Someone was standing where no agent claimed to be. And that single inconsistency threatened to unravel an entire narrative. Before he filed the anomaly, he did something that would later be called either brave or reckless. He made a copy. Not for profit. Not for blackmail. But because something in his gut told him this file might not survive official review. If this story is already making you uneasy, hit like now, because every layer we peel back only gets darker from here. The technician, Marcus Hale, wasn't supposed to be a hero. He was quiet, methodical, the kind of man who believed systems worked if you respected them. But systems don't always respect the truth. 2 days after the copy was made, federal auditors arrived unannounced. No warning. No explanation. Just badges and clipped voices demanding immediate access to the workstation. By that afternoon, the corrupted footage was officially listed as irretrievably damaged. Gone. Unusable. Case closed. Except Marcus still had the copy. And now, he had something else too, a problem. His access was revoked without reason. His ID badge stopped working. His supervisor stopped returning calls. And one night as he walked to his car beneath a parking garage echoing with hollow footsteps, he found a folded piece of paper tucked under his windshield wiper. No logo. No name. Just 3 words written in neat black ink. Let it go. From that moment, the investigation split in two. The official one, clean, controlled, quiet. And the real one, messy, dangerous, and very much alive. Across the city, a civil rights attorney named Lila Moreno was building a parallel case. She didn't trust press releases. She trusted patterns. And the pattern she saw in Alex Pretti's death wasn't new. Witnesses sidelined. Evidence delayed. Language softened until responsibility blurred. But Lila was different. She didn't just collect testimonies. She memorized the fear behind them. A teenage boy who had been filming that night told her his phone was accidentally wiped after he was detained briefly for questioning. A shop owner claimed agents told him his camera wasn't working, even though he'd checked it that morning. Every story pointed in the same direction. Someone was cleaning the scene long after the blood had melted into the pavement. If you think you already know who's telling the truth here, comment your theory, because what comes next will challenge every assumption. Meanwhile, Marcus knew he couldn't stay silent forever. But speaking meant choosing between safety and truth. And truth, in cases like this, has a way of demanding a price. He reached out to Lila through an encrypted channel, anonymously at first. He didn't send the file. Not yet. He sent a message instead. There is something you're not being told. And someone standing where they say no one was. Lila stared at the screen for a long time after reading it. Because for the first time since Alex died, someone from inside the system was reaching out. And that changed everything. Within days, she received another message. Coordinates. A time. And a warning. Come alone. The meeting place was a closed rail station on the outskirts of the city, half buried in snow, forgotten by commuters and cameras alike. Marcus arrived first. He stood under flickering lights, breath visible in the cold air, clutching a flash drive like it was the only solid thing left in his world. When Lila approached, he didn't greet her. He handed her the drive and said quietly, "Once you see this, there's no going back." She didn't ask questions. She took it. But before either of them could leave, footsteps echoed through the tunnel behind them. Too heavy. Too deliberate. Marcus turned pale. "Someone followed you," he whispered. The figures didn't run. They didn't shout. They simply stood at the far end of the platform, watching. Waiting. In that moment, Lila understood something terrifying. This was no longer just about Alex Pretti. This was about control. They escaped that night, barely, slipping through maintenance corridors and service exits that hadn't been used in years. But escape didn't mean safety. From that moment on, both of them were being watched. Phones glitched. Emails bounced. Unmarked cars lingered on quiet streets. And then came the real blow. Marcus didn't show up to work the next morning. Or the next. His apartment was found unlocked, lights on, bed untouched. No signs of struggle. No note. No explanation. Just absence. And the system that should have been screaming for answers went quiet. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe now, Because this isn't just about one case, it's about every truth that's ever tried to survive in the shadow of power. Lila realized she was now carrying the only remaining piece of evidence capable of exposing what really happened the night Alex Pretti died. A flash drive small enough to fit in her pocket. Heavy enough to destroy careers. Or end her own. She didn't go to the media. Not yet. She went somewhere else first. A digital forensics lab run by an old colleague who owed her a favor and trusted her with his life. They isolated the file. Restored fragments. Enhanced corrupted pixels. And then the image sharpened. Not perfectly, but enough. There was Alex, hands raised slightly, body angled away from the agents. There was the firing agent, exactly where reports said he was. And then, there was a third presence. A shadow stepping forward just before the shots. Not in uniform. Not marked. Not acknowledged. The room fell silent. Because that shadow didn't belong. And if that figure was real, then the shooting wasn't just a tragic mistake. It was something else entirely. A convergence of secrets no one was supposed to see. And just as Lila leaned closer to the screen, trying to isolate the figure's face, the lab's power cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. The monitors went black. And somewhere in the silence, a door opened. Slowly. Deliberately. If this story is pulling you in, make sure you like and share it. Because what happens next will force you to choose sides. And once you choose, there's no turning back. When the ice finally cracks, the darkness inside the lab didn't feel accidental. It felt intentional. The hum of machines had vanished. The glow of screens was gone. And in its place, silence thick enough to press against the ears. Lila didn't move. Not because she was frozen with fear, but because she had learned something dangerous about power. Power doesn't always rush. Sometimes it waits. The door creaked open behind them, slow and unhurried, as if whoever stood on the other side knew there was nowhere to run. A voice followed, calm, measured. You shouldn't have come here. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the room in a dull red glow. It wasn't a masked figure. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone Lila recognized. A federal investigator assigned to Alex Pretti's case. The same man who had spoken in press conferences about transparency. The same man who had promised justice with unwavering eyes. And now he stood between her and the truth. The tech beside her reached for his phone. The investigator raised his hand. Don't, he said quietly. This doesn't need to get ugly. That was the moment Lila understood. Alex's death wasn't just about a single shot. It was about a system protecting itself at all costs. She slipped the flash drive into her sleeve without breaking eye contact. You're not here for evidence, she said. You're here to erase it. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said something worse. You think the public is ready for what that footage really means? You think chaos is justice. That word, chaos, echoed in her mind. Because what he called chaos, she called truth. And truth doesn't ask permission. If this moment has you torn between fear and justice, hit like. Because the ending of this story isn't just about them, it's about us. The investigator took a step closer. I'm giving you a chance to walk away, he said. Leave the file. Forget what you saw. Lila's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. Alex Pretti didn't get to walk away. Silence followed. Not the kind filled with noise, the kind filled with decision. Suddenly, alarms blared. Not inside the lab, outside. Police sirens. Multiple. The investigator turned sharply toward the sound. Lila didn't wait. She moved. She shoved the workstation into him, sending metal crashing against the wall, and sprinted through the side corridor as doors slammed open behind her. She ran through emergency exits, icy air slicing into her lungs as she burst into the night. Snow whipped across the street like shards of glass. And for the first time since Alex died, the city didn't feel silent. It felt awake. The next 72 hours would change everything. The footage, fragments of it, found its way into the hands of journalists, civil rights groups, and international media outlets. Not the full truth, but enough. Enough to show inconsistencies. Enough to reveal that a civilian figure had been closer to Alex than reported. Enough to force questions no one could ignore. Headlines erupted. New footage raises questions in ICE shooting. Federal case under review after leaked evidence. Who was the third figure? And the nation leaned in. If you're still watching this right now, subscribe, because stories like this don't end with one case, they expose patterns. Investigations reopened. Congress demanded briefings. The agent who fired the shots was placed on indefinite leave. The investigator from the lab vanished from public view. And yet, despite all of it, justice remained just out of reach. No arrests, no convictions, just ongoing reviews and internal inquiries. Alex Pretti's family watched it unfold on television like the rest of the country, his face flashing across screens between political debates and breaking news banners. They were given condolences. They were given apologies. They were not given closure. And that is where this story becomes uncomfortable. Because the truth didn't bring peace. It brought visibility. And sometimes visibility is all the system is willing to allow. The shadow in the footage was never officially identified. The corrupted frames were labeled inconclusive. The case remains open. But something else happened. People started paying attention. Communities demanded body cameras that couldn't be erased. Courts began questioning federal use of force standards. Citizens stopped assuming silence meant innocence. Alex Pretti didn't become just a name. He became a question that refuses to disappear. Who holds power accountable when power is the one pulling the trigger? If this story made you rethink what you believe about justice, comment truth. Because your voice is part of what keeps stories like this alive. Years later, on that same frozen street in Minneapolis, the lamppost still stands where Alex fell. No plaque. No monument. Just a place where the snow always melts a little faster than the rest. Some say it's because of heat from underground pipes. Others say it's because the ground remembers. And every winter, when the ice cracks beneath passing footsteps, the city whispers his name again. Alex Pretti. A man who stepped forward when fear ruled the night. A man whose story proved that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is stand between power and the people it's meant to serve. And if you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Subscribe now, because the truth doesn't sleep, and neither do we.